Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Fin TV. I am joined by an exciting guest today, who is Renaud Besnard, who is the Chief Manufacturing Officer of Photobox. Renaud, thank you so much for coming on board and doing this. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Thank you very much for having me on that podcast. It's a real pleasure. So my background quickly, I'm an aerospace engineer. I'm French. I learned my trade in France, and I've been working a bit in France in the aerospace and then automotive industry. So I spent a few years at PSA Peugeot Citroën, the French automotive group, working on business planning and strategic planning for. We were trying to plan and forecast the next 10 years of what the automotive industry would look like. And it's always very exciting and very interesting to look back on what I thought my prediction would be at the time. But it was a great way for me to really interact with many teams and many departments, not just manufacturing, which is obviously very important and crucial in the automotive industry, but also the finance team, the marketing team, the product teams, etc. And a way also to discover a new type of industry. Then I worked in, and I moved to Canada to work with a French aerospace company called Thales, which is one of the key supplier of most of the aerospace industry, but in that case of Bombardier and their regional aircraft. And I was working as a supply chain at the time where supply chain was a vague concept, and we worked hard to really implement a fully integrated supply chain from our factories in Europe and in Asia down to the actual production line of Bombardier in Canada to manufacture some fast-growing aircraft, and I think that was again a very interesting time to be working with a high-pressure, fast-growing manufacturer like Bombardier, and then move back to Europe, move back to the UK, work for Stanley Black & Decker and DeWalt, which is more in the different space, different types of tools. Very power tools don't fly, but they are very popular, and again working in the operation for everything to do with after sales and service, which is a huge operation, obviously, for to cover all the power tools and support all the power tools in the European market. And then I've joined Photobox 14 years ago. That makes me quite almost one of the first member of the team. The company was actually created in 2000, so I only joined after 5 or 6 years of a great adventure. What was a startup at the time. Photobox, in just a few words, is the European leading company for anything to do with photo and personalized printing. So we cover products like photographic prints, photo books, photo mugs, photo calendars, etc., etc. And I joined at a stage where we had one tiny factory in the northwest suburbs of London. I mean, our operational business is printing. That's what we do, and we did quite a few acquisitions, integrated with other brands and other businesses across Europe, in Spain, in France, in Germany. And the size of the company has multiplied quite extensively. We operate 4 factories across Europe, which are specializing in digital printing and digital finishing. It's a very reinventing type of manufacturing. I'm sure we will cover that a bit later, but printing is still in a modernization and digitalization phase. It's a bit late behind other types of industries. And I think companies like us, with a clear idea of the products we wanted to make and the service we wanted to serve to our customers, really try to develop and reinvent what photo printing was. So we operate those 4 factories covering most of the European markets. We've got partners as well helping us in Australia and in other geographies. And all in all, that's about 10 million customers we try to serve every year. And the manufacturing team for Photobox is a mix of obviously very skilled people with a very strong experience on the printing and the finishing side, but also some wider profile focusing around lean manufacturing, which is also a very important concept for us, and obviously the quality and the supply chain activities.
Well, you've covered quite a lot. I mean, it seems like you've had a very interesting background going from companies that are, I mean, doing such interesting things as aviation, aerospace, to then Black & Decker, to Photobox now. It's probably giving you or colored your experience and brought with you a number of different types of practices or best practices that you can implement. Is that would that be safe to say?
It's really what it is, and I think people often ask me, why did you come to printing? Why did you end up in that small startup doing some some photos and books and stuff like that? And somewhere somehow there are far more similarities between what you need to achieve in the aerospace industry or in the automotive industry and what we are trying to implement at Photobox. The desire to have a high quality product, the focus on the customer expectations, the need to deliver on time, all of that is actually the same. I mean, yes, we are talking about a much cheaper product. I mean, an avionics or large electronic units for an aircraft is far more expensive than a book or a set of prints. But somehow the significance for your customer is almost the same. Whether you try to install your equipment on the Bombardier production line, or whether it's a very important, very significant memories for one of our customers today, holidays, wedding, the birth of
A big deal.
newborn.
Yeah.
So, but the operational principle around, again, lean, just in time, quality, business planning, and the correlation between your business planning and what you need to implement in your production lines. All those principles, which have indeed learned and acquired in different industries, are roughly the same when you come to the world of Photobox and photo printing.
Let me ask you. Let me step back to some of the things that you said at the beginning. So you made predictions 10 years ago about what the state of the automotive marketplace was going to look like. So were you right?
I can only remember part of that. I think we at the time, and it was back in 1998. I think we were considering that SUVs and larger family vehicles were going to be rising and to be growing in terms of market share. I think on that point I was right. I think it was very important because automotive factories, I mean, it takes time to change, redeploy new production lines in those kind of factories. And that's the time where a lot of the automotive industry was going to Eastern Europe and then to Asia to manufacture cars. So it was a very important statement to be sure that we were going to make the right factory for the right cars and the right products later on. Overall, I think I wasn't too bad in terms of planning the right set of cars for the following 10 years. Yes.
Would you have been able to predict? Would anybody have been able to predict the level of interest that the market would have, the automotive market and then other markets, in customization and personalization? Because that's really changed things, hasn't it?
It has, and I think it was quite hard to find out at the time. I don't think it was probably a bit early. However, you're absolutely right, because there were many projects at the time to try to introduce customization and offline customization in the production lines in the automotive industry. One of the brands in the group called Citroën, which is one of those French brands in the group, was actually ahead and was testing some project to be able to customize the cars and some details in the cars. And the main idea at the time was the idea of manufacturing platform. So everything you don't see as a customer in a car would be the same, would be standardized, whether it's a Peugeot, Citroën, or another brand in the group. And that's your platform, and somehow the platform, what the platform represents, has to be as large as possible. And when I started, I think there was a lot of non-common parts and non-common equipment in between the different similar cars. I think the size of the platform increased dramatically to be more than 60 or 70%. At that time, then, if you have been able to standardize what the customers don't see, you can invest far more energy and far more money and resources on the customization, which is the part which actually is bringing value to the customer and therefore to the business.
Mm-hmm. And with regards to the pace of change, because that's something that has fundamentally altered in the last 10, 15, 20 years. There's always been change, of course, but do you think that there has been, the pace of change has increased dramatically?
I think yes, and there are various words to describe that pace of change. We're getting more digital, Industry 4.0, etc., etc. So those are probably some keywords which can only describe part of the truth and part of the pace of the change. I think most of the industries that I've seen, again, aerospace, automotive industry, quite heavy industries before that, were innovating, yes, but at a much slower pace. I think now we're entering from the window I've seen in the last 14 years at Photobox. I think some key players have really invested quite a lot to work on that. The idea is that yes, also printing can be more digital. I mean, the companies are HP, Xerox, Canon, all those big names of the printing industry have really understood the potential benefits of digitalization. And I think the access to data has changed dramatically. That's probably a second factor in that acceleration of the change. I think the fact that we have connected production lines and equipments is also a key acceleration factor in that change. And I think finally, the fact that we are able to bring personalization to the production line is also quite a new factor. And I think you were raising the fact on cars when I started my career. I think now we're moving to an era of personalization of manufacturing. I think that's key. Obviously, that's all we do at Photobox. Everything we do is personalized, but I think it's a more general trend, which is becoming wider and wider.
So let's talk about the role of someone in manufacturing today. So a professional in manufacturing. How does someone prepare their businesses, their factories, for the pace of change, for personalization, for global customer demands? How does someone do that whilst maintaining a competitive advantage?
I think one way is to break the silos.
Yeah.
I've seen manufacturing being proudly managed by manufacturing people, and that still makes sense. I mean, you want some industrial and production experience to be able to run a factory. You need the right skill set, but now it's becoming more and more of a team effort. I think in my example, one of the most working in manufacturing is actually a technology or IT team. It's a technology team which develops and drive the changes, most of the changes in the factory. And you don't work with a technology team the same way you work with a mechanical engineering or team in your factory. It's a different way to operate. It's a different way to describe the requirements, and it's a different way to achieve and grow together. And what we found very useful is in order to avoid that kind of misunderstanding or silo between technology manufacturing on one side is a product function. I think the product function in the sense of digital product is now becoming very important. We know digital product manager or digital product owners in the web, in the world of technology. If you go to Facebook, if you go to Apple, whoever. I think now we need product owners in manufacturing as well, people who, and that's a very important role, people who understand enough of the manufacturing process, work alongside the manufacturing, the production managers, but are able to translate the need and the requirements from manufacturing to a technology team, and are able to phase those development and those requirements in order of priorities, and the priorities can be given by by the business overall. It could be cost driven, could be innovation driven, could be whatever the criteria.
I think what's very interesting, what you've just been describing, is the role of the digital product manager as someone that is a go-between between your manufacturing professional, your manufacturing director or production director, and the technology team. Someone that can act as a go-between and translate essentially the manufacturing process needs with the technological advances that are out there. How common is that role in manufacturing businesses today?
I think it's not. I think it's not, and I think it's a big miss. And it was a miss for us at Photobox for many years until we invested into the right people and the right organization. If not, what you're going to get is a hardware development of your factories and a software development of your factories in parallel, but they will never connect. The issue is that you're going to have the best possible machines and production line designed by manufacturing, and you're going to have potentially the best possible software to track orders, production metrics, etc., etc. But they will not be linked. They will not connect to each other. And the real power of accessing more data and accessing more knowledge of what's happening on the shop floor is that you have a real-time connection and a real-time understanding, both on the hardware and the software together. And if you don't have anybody in a job connecting your manufacturing team and your technology team, then you will have two separate developments that will not produce the benefits that you would expect. So for me, when we hear a lot about Industry 4.0, all the tools are available, all the tools are here. I mean, yes, you probably need to invest a bit more into your technology team and have people who design your manufacturing systems, whether it's linked to the flow of orders, whether it's linked to your key metrics, whether it's linked to the behavior of a machine. But more importantly, you need to have the strong connection between both the manufacturing and the technology.
Yeah, and how do you find someone? Is that someone that you go out to market to find someone with special skills? Can you create that person within your business? How have you done it?
The product, it's a very product job. The product owner or product manager job is more and more popular. I mean, you've got quite a lot, especially again, if you look at the world of internet and web and etc. Most of the time, it's quite hard to find somebody who's has a background working with technology, who's been acting and understanding that position of manager, and who has manufacturing experience. I mean, that's kind of impossible. And what we've done most of the time is actually to get people with the right technology and product experience and bring them to the world of manufacturing. It's far easier. It takes the right mindset, but it's far easier to get to learn manufacturing than to learn product and working with technology. So it's actually the right what we've done in the past, and I think it worked pretty well, and we got, I think, the right profiles and the right people to join our organization.
So in terms of advice for someone in manufacturing right now, break the silos, try to find someone that can act as the go-between. What other advice would you have for someone in manufacturing or running supply chains, whatever, in this industry today?
Well, I think the other advice, I mean, it's kind of linked with what we were discussing, but don't underinvest into your business planning. I mean, there are various ways to describe that. SNOP, integrated business planning, etc., etc. There are different methodologies to do it. It doesn't really matter. I'm sure whatever works is good. But the investment into that kind of integrated business planning is very important. It's not just about demand planning. It's not just about forecasting. I think it's a wider benefit, and it's a wider requirement than that. It's a dynamic loop, and again, it's about breaking the silos. In that case, mostly with your business teams, whether in our case commercial and marketing teams, but it could be other teams driving what the operations and the manufacturing team need to achieve. But that integrated business planning is very important and require, again, quite a lot of routine interaction in order to get to the right outcome. The right outcome is a loop which involve most of the players creating value, adding value in the supply chain, and supply chain in that case, in the wider sense of the word supply chain, and be able to understand the requirement of upfront demand planning, operational capacity, and back to the demand planning. It's a key activity, it's a key function which absolutely need to have the right level of focus from the top of the organization and the right level of investment.
Moving around a little bit, you said at the beginning that you guys were a bit late to the game in digitization, that the printing industry in general has been late to the game in digitization, which probably gives you an opportunity to have observed some of the things that have worked and not worked. Depending on who you ask, the latest studies say that over 75% of digital transformation projects fail. Why do you think most of the digital transformation projects fail?
Well, that could be linked to the point I mentioned earlier. What you try to, it's a good idea to try to get some more digital data, but if you can't do anything with it, if it's not connected with the rest of your process, then that's probably going to fail. And I think that's probably one of the key reasons. In our world, if I can do just a quick focus and spotlight on printing. Printing, the reason why I said earlier printing is a bit behind is because you have to figure out printing as a slightly older industry. Let's go back a few centuries ago, designed to produce 10,000, 20,000 copies of the same print. That's what printing has been doing for a while, and then companies like us come around 20 years ago and say, oh, actually, we want to do only one copy. We only want to do the unique personalized photo book for this gentleman or this lady, and that's a unique one, and we want to do it at a competitive price in an industrial way. So one of the reasons why it took so long for us to try to be more efficient and more digital is probably because most of the industry and most of the suppliers were not ready. So we couldn't find actually a supplier or suppliers at the time to really fit our vision of trying to have a fully customized printing production line, which would be fully digital and allowing us to manage the uniqueness of each single SKU and each single product we were going to manufacture. So overall, it took quite a lot of time and energy for us to explain and convince the industry in place and the incumbent suppliers of our need and of the benefits of developing machines in a different way. Machines able not only to do 10,000 copies, but one copy. Machines being able to extract data. In our case, a barcode, an order reference, or anything, in order to be able to track that order along the chain. So I think an industry is not a standalone organization. There is an ecosystem around that made of suppliers, providers, outsourcers, etc., etc. And you can't do everything on your own. And I think in some case, if your entire chain is not fully digital, then yes, a digital project is going to fail. You need to make sure that you choose the solution, the providers, the partners that can go along that digitalization from A to Z.
So any weakness in that chain could potentially break a digital transformation project.
Absolutely.
So it's imperative to understand those processes, understand the chain, understand every depth of that chain, and see how digital those organizations are as well. It's very interesting. Now, with regards to your digitization journey or digitization journey at the moment, what do you think out there in the industry is hype, and what do you think is essential?
Well, naming is hype. So calling every project, Industry 4.0 or whatever is hype. What's essential is accessing the data and doing something with it. And I think that's what we are all trying to do in our manufacturing world. And every time I meet other industry, I think that's what we are trying to do. What's essential is to define your target and define your objective. I think we are not always enough outcome driven, and there is a bit of let's be digital for the sake of being digital, because probably it sounds cool to the board or to the rest of the organization. What's the real outcome? It could be a cost saving outcome. It could be a need to be able to deploy a new production line. It could be an outcome driven by a waste reduction. I mean, what defines your outcome is probably the most essential step in this project, and digital needs to be serving that purpose. Nothing else. And that's why you realize that you may need, as a production manager, to introduce some more data, more transparency, more safety, better monitoring, etc., in order to serve that purpose. In our case, for example, at Photobox, our purpose for many years has been the reduction of the manufacturing lead time. It's been simply for us in a very competitive retail environment where our consumers, our customers, shop from Amazon and from others, and then from us. We need to be as quick as possible in order to match the requirements of the retail business, and therefore we need to reduce our manufacturing lead time. So for us, the outcome was very clear, and then we used various tools, some of them being digital, some of them being pure, lean manufacturing, a la Toyota from the 50s and the 60s, in order to reduce our manufacturing lead time for each single order, not as a bulk requirement, but each single order had to leave the factory quicker than 6 months before. So to answer your question, defining clearly the target and the outcome, I think it's absolutely essential in those projects.
So I guess maybe ask yourself the question first: what problem am I trying to solve?
Yes, exactly. And I think avoiding something I've seen and I've witnessed in the past, which is just I need to bring some digitalization because my boss likes it, or because it looks or it sounds cool, etc. I think what is the true problem you're trying to solve, and how you back to the roots of lean manufacturing. You have to define very clearly what is the purpose of your project, and indeed what is it you're trying to improve or to solve.
You got cut off there, and you have to define.
And you have to define very clearly which problem you solve.
Okay, brilliant. I think We've covered quite a lot. What do you think are, I'm going to ask you to make a prediction here now. What do you think the manufacturing role will look like in the next 10 years? How will it evolve?
I think the role is indeed changing. I think I will relate back to what I explained earlier with the interaction with technology and the business planning. I think it's becoming a much wider role, um, and uh, and somehow I think that's quite exciting, by the way. But it probably will drive different profiles to come to manufacturing, and probably will also attract different profiles to the world of manufacturing. Now, if you run a factory or factories, your job is probably more complex. I mean, you have to think about um, how to fuel your factory, and now the fuel is no longer just labor or no longer just coal or whatever. Now it's also IT data, your bandwidth, and the set of the digital workflow you want to implement in your factory, and that's quite a new thinking for most of the manufacturing managers. So I think I can imagine that in 10 years from now, the job of chief operation officer and CTO, chief technical officer, could become one.
Yeah.
You could imagine that there is quite a lot of benefits of having some transfer between the world of technology coming to manufacturing, because it will be quite key. But it's not just about digital anyway. I mean, in most cases, there are some new requirements. I mean, we didn't speak much about health and safety and environment, etc. But I think that's going to become also quite important and more important in the next 10 years as well. And we spoke earlier about the business planning and breaking the silos in order to have more accessibility and more connection with the rest of the business. So it will become wider. I think it will become more technology minded, and I think that it's I'm quite excited to be in manufacturing and to see how it's going to evolve over the next 10 years.
What you say is really interesting with regards to, everybody talks about technology, right? For us, I've been in this space a long time, and I've seen it evolve from, we were talking about Lean and Six Sigma and talking about Kaizen, 15 years ago, 20 years ago or more. And it was all around that. Toyota, methodologies and what have you. And then all of a sudden it changed in it to digitization, digital industry 4.0, machine learning, AI. And what you're saying is really fascinating, because you're not saying that, what you're saying is that the technology is very important, obviously, but the role of the future is going to involve technology as a given, but never forgetting the roots of manufacturing, the production.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
No, absolutely. And I think I'm even if we spend the last 20 minutes talking about technology and digitalization, for us, lean manufacturing is still extremely key in what we do. And I'm going to sound a bit maybe provocative, but when we do lean manufacturing, we try to use as little technology as possible, actually.
Yeah.
And I think it's only when you get to the point where only technology can help you solve the problem, you need to change the workflow, or you need to access a different type of data or different type of metrics, then that's when you are really solving a problem through technology. But lean manufacturing can remain on paper and boards and 5 minute stand-up meetings, and etc., as long as possible. And it's really important to try to push that lean approach as far as possible outside of the technology world. When you can't go further, that's where you got a bigger problem to solve, and that's where you need a bigger contribution of technology and digitalization into your production workflow.
Well, I guess that makes sense then. Technology is definitely important, but don't forget the roots. Don't forget the lean manufacturing. Don't forget the things that that make manufacturing what it is today. And that will probably be the best way to move forward with digital transformation. Renaud, thank you so much for being part of this podcast, being part of our FinTV show. I'm sure we'll have you again talking about a number of things, because we can talk for a long time about the challenges that you're facing and what are the things that you've seen throughout your career. But thank you very much. And for those of you tune in for the next episode. Thanks, Renaud.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Maria, for having me. It's been a pleasure.